Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and on this channel we like to walk a very fine line between a shopping addicted makeup monster and a responsible adult with a makeup hobby. Now, I really enjoy eyeshadow singles, duochromes, multichromes, blush, highlight, lip gloss, basically everything except pressed glitter, and today we're going to do another 10 palettes that had people in a chokehold. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick with me, we're getting into it right now. The first palette that I wanted to talk about was the Kat Von D, back before it was KVD Beauty, the Mi Vida Loca palette. It was like this big rainbowy palette, and you know, it had her face on it, she had like her tattoos and everything. It looked very like goth ethereal. I don't know, it was a really cool like packaging concept, and all the shades were in a circle, which was really like cool to look at. And of course that rainbow vibe is very aesthetically pleasing for the former like Lisa Frank generation, right? So for me, that palette was a little bit before my time, so it was already like the lost white whale of other people before I came on the makeup scene. So I don't really have like a whole lot of love lost, but I think if it was re-released today, I would definitely consider picking it up. One, because of like the hype that was there when it was first out, and two, because I thought in general it looked like a really pretty palette, and I liked the layout, the packaging, the outside cover art. In terms of, you know, KVD at this point is no longer, like, she's no longer a part of the brand. She doesn't make money off the brand, so I feel more comfortable supporting the brand again at this point. The other palette that they released that got super hyped up was the Shade and Light palette. It was like this OG neutral palette, and a lot of brands, a lot of like knockoff and dupe brands, like the W7, the Revolution kind of people, all duped out this palette. So this palette was like iconic. People were really hyped for this palette, and to me, I owned it. I did own it. I did buy it at one point, and I was like, this is it. Like, this is all this palette does, and I decluttered it. And part of me is like, I wonder if I would use it again as like base shades to kind of work off of for other things. But at the time that I had it, I had no appreciation for it because it was all just neutral mattes, and I'm definitely more like, give me sparkle, give me glitter, give me duochrome, give me multichrome. Well, not pressed glitter, but like give me glittery finishes, right? I want something that's really impressive on the lid. This is not as impressive as I want. This is from the ColourPop Lost in Love palette, and the video for this should be coming, if it's not already out, should be coming this week. So this palette definitely was like a loss for me. It was so hyped for other people. If it came out today, I can't imagine spending that much money on a palette that I would otherwise use to like fill in my brows and do like some contouring with. So I think I would pass over it pretty easily, but I can definitely acknowledge and appreciate what a staple palette it must have been for other people. All right, the next one is the, oh, and let me scooch over because I know full well I'm going to want to put pictures in here, and I'm not very good at scooching over. I'm a bad scoocher. All right, next up is the Wet n Wild Comfort Zone palette, and I'm talking about the OG horizontal rectangular pan Wet n Wild Comfort Zone palette, because they remade it like 2018, 2019-ish, and did like the diagonal pans. That's when they duped out the ABH Modern Renaissance. I disliked that formula so much. It was so much worse than the original formula. The original formula, which I did have, was so buttery and soft. It was like running your fingers in velvet. It was so nice to feel. The duochrome shade in there, they had like a blue brown shade in there that was very pretty, and none of the shades had really like crazy dimension, but I did think they looked nice on the eyes. If this palette were re-released today, if those formulas were re-released today, regardless of the color story, I would definitely go ahead and pick them up. If the original Wet n Wild palette came out again, I would probably pick it up for the nostalgia of it all. But if they just have that like revamped with the sort of diagonal palettes in it, I did not like that formula nearly as much, so that's an easy pass for me. The next one is the Too Faced and Nikki Tutorials Power of Makeup. It was the collab palette that they really like took advantage of Nikki on. I think for all of the thousands and thousands of units that she helped to sell through the collaboration, she got paid like a total of $50,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but at the time, for the amount of influence that she has to sort of get people to purchase things, it definitely, Too Faced made off with more money than they should have. But anyway, This would have been a no for me. I think this came out around the time that I was getting into makeup. So, and I didn't really watch Nikki at the time. I still don't, because that influencer gasp for every single thing is not my vibe at all. And I don't like all the like memes getting thrown around and the jump cuts and everything is like PR and stuff. Like it just, I don't know. I don't find it relatable. So I don't watch her. But the palette itself, I mean, predominantly neutrals. There's a purple, there's like a teal color in there. There's a pink and an orange blush, a bronzer, and what I'm assuming is a highlighter. Yeah, I don't think this would pull my interest at all. If this re-released today, I still wouldn't buy it. And it really looks a lot like the Too Faced sort of holiday collections they put out every year, where you have predominantly neutrals with like a pop of blue or a pop of green or a pop of purpley pink. And then, you know, some random blushes and face products to sort of round it out. Yeah, this would have been a very easy pass for me. All right, next up is the Tartlette in Bloom palette, which I actually do own and still have in my collection. I do like this palette. It's the one that I took with me on my honeymoon, so I think I will probably always keep it in my collection because it has that memory for me. If it came out again today and I didn't have that memory associated with it, I think it would be easy for me to pass over the collection again. I'm not a super neutral person. I love more like bright and interesting colors, cool toned colors. So at least it has the cool toned part going for it, but it's just not very colorful. And the metallics in that palette are pretty, but they're very soft, sort of demure metallics, whereas I like more over the top stuff. All right, next up is the Dose of Colors Dezi x Katie Friendcation palette, and people lost their marbles for this palette. Rightly so. It was a beautiful palette. I own the palette, by the way. I love the outside packaging had this like gold foily kind of textural feeling to it, and then the inside you had sort of half neutral, and then there was pops of like this really olivey green and this dark like gunmetal-y kind of shade. I think it's a really nice like cohesive palette. The metallics, even to this day, which this palette is elderly in palette years, even to this day I still think the metallics work really nicely in this palette. So for me, like if it came out again, I would probably buy it again. Next up is the original Glamlite and Mikayla palette, and this one I was never like a follower of Mikayla's. I think I follow her on Instagram because I entered a giveaway at one point and never like went back and unfollowed or anything. But I don't follow her. I don't take her recommendations, especially not after the whole Lashgate thing. I think there are some people that are really good at providing entertainment in the beauty space, but I don't necessarily take their recommendations as like gospel. So I think she falls into that category where she can definitely be entertaining, but she is not somebody that I would take advice from. But when she did her first palette, I was super excited for it. I loved the sort of grungy teal kind of blue shades. There was like a green purple towards the bottom, and then the top part was all neutrals. I do still have this palette, but I definitely like their part two. I do still have this palette, but I do like the part two better than the original palette, but it definitely took people by storm. I think they sold out like almost immediately. They had several rounds of pre-orders and things like that, restocks. So this palette definitely like moved units, that's for sure. Next up is the original Melt Gemini, and this is another one where I do own this palette. I really like the sort of swampy green side of it, but the sort of orangey neutral side is less impressive to me or less exciting to me. If it re-released today, I mean, it's still available today, so it's not really like it would re-release, but if it were a new launch today, I'd be tempted for the greens, but I think if I took my time and actually looked through my collection to see how many swampy olivey green palettes I already owned, I think I could probably talk myself off the ledge. Next up is the Shroud and Battybean collection, or Battybean if you were back with her for the original order. This was a circus of a launch. I don't think anybody really anticipated how much desire there was going to be for this palette, and I think Shroud did the best they could to try to make people happy, and it still wasn't enough for some people. So if you don't know what happened, they launched their palette, and it's this really pretty, let's see, I still have it. Let me get it out. So it's got this like spooky teal, and then the inside is like grunge teal, cool toned kind of colors. Very interesting and innovative compared to a lot of what's been out. When they sneak peeked the original palette, that got picked up by Trend Mood, and I think there was just overwhelming interest in the palette because it was so different from everything else that was coming out around the same time. And when they did their launch, it sold out, I want to say in like less than a minute or two. Like, it sold out fast. So I'm sure the anticipated demand is not the supply that, like, what they anticipated and what was actually there were very different numbers in my mind. I don't have any data to support that. Just my own personal feelings. So she sold out almost immediately, and then there was some, sort of outcry, like, can we just do a pre-order or something? And so she opened up a pre-order, but she didn't put a cap on the pre-order. So anybody who wanted to do the pre-order had, I think, at least several days to put in an order. I know I put my order in probably about 2 or 3 hours after the original launch went out of stock, and that was probably an hour or so after the pre-order had opened. So I just happened to stumble across a post that said they had opened the pre-order and then went and pre-ordered. Now, they did a good job of kind of updating everybody throughout the whole process, but it was lengthy. I think the original launch was in October, like the beginning of October maybe, and I didn't get my palette until like February or March. So it was a long wait, and I don't mind waiting as long as I have communication from a brand to say, like, we didn't forget, we're still working on it, or these are the order numbers we've gotten through, these are the order numbers that are next, or whatever. I already spent the money, so it's not the money part of it. I just want to know that the product is eventually coming. So for me, it wasn't the end of the world. I was super hyped for it. I love the palette. Obviously, it's survived multiple declutters since then. So I'm really a fan. If it relaunched now, I would still buy it again. But I know that put a lot of people, like, it gave a lot of people like a sour taste in their mouth about how long the pre-order took to fulfill. But I really just think it was the fact that they could not have anticipated so much overwhelmingly positive response for the collab. And then the last palette to talk about in this particular round is the Cosmic Brushes Serenity palette. So this is another occasion where a small indie brand, this one's based out of UK, I believe, launched a palette and everybody lost their marbles for it, which is wild because they had already launched a palette in the same sort of like family prior, and that was like reds and pinks and purples, and that one did not seem to be as well received. It went on clearance until they went out of stock with it. But Serenity caught everyone's attention, and it's a gorgeous palette. It's got some duochrome, multi-chrome shades in it, very buttery metallic shades similar to like a Glamlite formula. The mattes are super duper pigmented. I mean, it's gorgeous and very affordable. These palettes are like $20-30. So in the indie world where everything is just ratcheting up in price all the time, it's nice to see something that's actually still staying affordable and has such a phenomenal quality. So I think those two things together really are what created such a huge hype for that launch. They did have subsequent launches that also seem to have incredible amounts of hype to them. So very, very happy for their brand. But if that came out today, I would 100% buy it again. I would set my alarm clock and I would be there right when the site opened to buy that palette because I think it is so pretty. The fact that it's predominantly cool toned, blues, greens, some like kind of purpley shades. There's one random orange that I never use and a brown, but everything else in there, tip top. That is everything for this video. I want to thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.